Welcome to the Hublife Podcast. Here today with Phil and I is Billie Lawler. Yay! We're so excited to have you, Billie, today. So I'm going to read this so that I get it right. So you are from Nourishing Norfolk Network and you're the coordinator. That is a mouthful, isn't it? But you're actually from the Norfolk Community Foundation as well.
Yes.
Do you
absolutely.
have that written on a piece of paper? So it's like
it's a big piece of paper, yes.
Your name badges must be huge.
Exactly. We just like to get as many letters and words on as we can.
My goodness. Well, thank you for coming today to speak to us. And I want to get this up because we've taken this off of your website and I want to read it right so that people at home know what the Norfolk Community Foundation does. And so this is what it says. It brings together grassroots level groups of all sizes to ensure communities have access to affordable, healthy food, which is, I love that, which is great. And then you also help fund and support community supermarkets, food hubs, buses across Norfolk. Is that all right?
Yes,
excellent,
absolutely. So it's a really good start.
Oh, no, there you go. There we go. But I remember meeting Billie like years ago, and that was when you were setting up the first community supermarket at Charles Burrell.
The first one in East Anglia.
Yeah, it was 3 years ago now. Which
3 years ago.
Yeah.
Gosh.
In some ways, it feels like it's always been there at the Charles Burrell Centre, and food hubs have always been a thing. And in other ways, it feels like a couple of months ago that we were originally setting up, and a lot has happened between that time span for sure. And
a lot has happened because your job has changed as well. Yes. So you're now the coordinator of Nourishing Norfolk. Is that right?
Absolutely. So we were approached originally with this idea. We didn't really know, and neither did Norfolk Community Foundation at the time, really know how it was supposed to look, feel. Yeah. We just kind of had this idea that people needed that bridging gap between what yourselves do for people in crisis and kind of the everyday supermarket. And it was born out of giving and delivering food parcels during pandemic. Yeah. And there was this whole kind of idea, and Charles Burrell Centre just said, that sounds like a really good idea. Let's give it a bash.
Yeah, so for people who don't know, it's the Burrell shop that's out of the Charles Burrell Centre in Thetford.
Yeah, absolutely. So it looks like a corner shop that happens to be in a community centre, and it does make people, as they walk past, stop and do a bit of a double take. Yeah. But that's great because it means they come in because they want to be a little bit nosy, find out what it's about. Can anyone shop there, etc., etc. So even if it's not for them, they go away with a really good idea of what it is about. Yep. And then if they're speaking positively about it, it might encourage a neighbour who's struggling or whoever to then actually access.
That's why we want to talk to you as well, because I think they're relatively new concept, and I think many people wouldn't know about them or what they are or how they work. And so that's why we thought we'd get you on and talk about it.
I think because you're involved in it, you kind of assume that after 3 years, everybody must know what it's
the centre of the universe, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well, centre of mind, but not everybody's apparently. But it's amazing when people still don't know. And even people who live near to the Charles Burrell Centre suddenly aware that there's this affordable food hub, and what is it? So any time that we can explain to people what it's about and maybe encourage those who have been struggling a bit, but as we know, it's hard to reach out for help. If it encourages them to go in and access, then that's brilliant.
On that note then, maybe it would be a good idea to give you a little overview, because maybe most people know we're talking about on the podcast exploring the ideas of ending the need for food banks. But so before we get into that sort of conversation of how that fits in with food banks and community supermarkets or social supermarkets, maybe you can give an overview of the different expressions of social supermarkets, community supermarkets, the buses, all the different ways it happens across Norfolk, and even all the, how it works for each one, because they're all sort of independent ones and they work slightly different. But maybe if you can get a breadth of the overview of all the different expressions of it so people can understand what we're actually talking about.
As you say, they are they come from within their own community, and they are each of the 23 affordable food hubs under the Nourishing Norfolk Network banner currently are all retain their own autonomy, but with the same warm welcome, the same ethics of light touch sign up and wanting genuinely to help people in their local community. So as you say, each one is totally different. We have some that run from a church porch, one in Norwich that runs from little more than a broom cupboard, but blimey, they fit a lot into that broom cupboard.
God, I remember the days of a broom cupboard.
I'm sure, absolutely. You'll feel that totally. To things that we have in porta cabins, huge rooms, as you know, in community centres, We've got 2 buses. One goes out across Breckland, and you can literally step on the bus and shop. It's kitted out inside. Another bus goes...
Does that move from different locations?
Yeah, absolutely.
Villages and stuff? Such a good idea.
Yeah, and that helps with the rurality. And, if you're in a village that doesn't have huge public transport links, or you don't have a car, or maybe you really are struggling and even a bus fare is a lot, having something that comes out to your village is sometimes a real lifeline. Another one of the buses goes full of stock and unloads and does like a pop-up shop in different communities that's out on the coast. There's every kind of type of pop-up shop or static shop that you can imagine, really. And they might be called a social supermarket, a citizen supermarket, a pantry, but they all come with the same thing of let's get people access to affordable, quality, nutritious food, personal care, home care, pet food, etc. And alongside that, and probably becoming even more important day by day, is the wraparound care that goes with that access.
I'd like to talk to you specifically about
stuff.
that later, about your experience with that. That'd be really handy. But so generally speaking, it's like the seeded, funded wide through Nourishing Norfolk, all of them within the network, because there'll be other independent ones that do the same sort of thing as well.
Absolutely.
But generally volunteer run, even though you might have, I suppose it's different for every expression, maybe it can be fully volunteer run, or have a couple of staff members and other volunteers doing it as well.
Yeah, most of them have at least one paid member of staff, even if it's only part-time. But without the level of volunteers, as you guys will know, it just wouldn't happen. How busy the hubs are with the volume of households that sign up, they just couldn't run without the amazing team of volunteers in each one. We do have a couple that are completely volunteer-led, and that comes with its own challenges. But by and large, absolutely, without the volunteers, it wouldn't happen. We are absolutely blessed to have the kind of volunteers in the quantity that we have
similar
across
to the
network.
food banks, across the food bank network. It's very,
absolutely,
very similar.
that people want to step up and help others. And sometimes that volunteering experience has been born of people accessing the food hub when they're in a bit of a challenging place, a chaotic place. And then once their life is a little less chaotic, they want to come in and give some hours because they in turn want to help the next person walking through the door who's reaching out for help, which is just fantastic.
And so to make clear for the people who haven't heard of them at all, they're different in the fact that people purchase the food, they buy the food. It's just at a reduced cost. So it's affordable in that it might be 50% of the budget supermarket's price of items, or less or more, depending. I suppose it depends.
And sometimes there is free items as well. Some things are donated to be gifted on, and that's absolutely fine. The vast majority of what goes on in the hubs is bought in, but it is then given for purchase, as you say, at that hugely reduced cost, which can make all the difference to a family that's on a really limited budget. But even with the donated things, when you look at the overall shopping basket that someone has popped on your till, having the free items and the items for purchase, it just brings down the overall cost of that shopping basket hugely. And when you're on that tiny budget, a couple of pounds can really make all the difference.
So, sorry, just interrupt. So people have to become a member, or how does that work? Just because for people at home that may not know about that.
So it's really what we call light touch. So it's name, address, who lives in your household permanently, and what ages are they? So are they kind of 0 to 18, 18 to 65, and 65 plus? Right. That helps us with some of our funding when we're trying to access certain funds to help a particular cross-section of the community. And the only other thing they need to do is take in a proof of ID, like a council tax letter or a driving licence, just to prove that they live in the area that the hub can currently look after. Right. And that's pretty much it. What we find is that people very quickly, within a couple of visits, are telling us all the reasons that has brought them to the food hub. And that trust and rapport is built up. I mean, you'll know from the guys that you might see a couple of times, you'll understand their situation, and you'll then be able to maybe signpost on to other forms of help. And because the offer of assistance and support has come from someone that you've built up a little bit of a rapport with, that wraparound care and support is generally then much better engaged with, and the offer of support and assistance is taken up rather than all that, I'll look at that when I get home. It actually starts to happen, which is brilliant because it means that person moves further away from the crisis and the chaos that they perhaps find themselves in right now.
Yeah.
Are you seeing, like we have over, I know it's only 3 years for you guys, but like, are you seeing more and more usage or because the need's there and you're expanding as a service as well? So, but, and does that bring its own difficulties, like even sourcing food, because the customers will purchase food off of you, but you've got to source the food, or you don't necessarily, but the independent social supermarket does. Like where they source their food from, has there been problems with that across the network?
Speaking as someone with a running the hub hat on, absolutely a huge portion of my time was spent in finding those avenues of purchase, donation, support. As a network, we've actually taken on somebody, my colleague Tori, who it's her job now to source opportunities for all of the hubs, and we've set up a distribution hub.
Much more efficient way of doing it centrally.
Absolutely. Up in Norwich, Norse have been hugely helpful. They've given us warehouse space. They've also allowed us access to their distribution network, so we don't have to then either hire a van or pay for a van. The Norse guys are going out across Norfolk anyway, and they very kindly take our deliveries with them, which has been phenomenal and has cut down again on those costs. But yeah, absolutely, the sourcing of food, whether it be donated or purchased, is getting harder, and the need is getting bigger. I think maybe in part because people are becoming aware of what the food hubs are and can offer, which is fine. But the more people you have, the more you need to be sourcing and thinking about opening hours and absolutely. Yeah. So there's always that kind of chasing your tail feel kind of going on.
Where do you purchase food from then? Because because I'm a planner, I'd be like trying to get as many of the middle layers out, going straight to manufacturers. But do you find like there's things in the way of being able to do that, or is it always
Sometimes, yeah. It's some people are really open to a working partnership, and others are like, we don't really kind of understand what you're doing right now. Can we get back to you? And some do, which is brilliant. Sometimes it takes knocking on the door 3, 4, 5 times, and then suddenly you speak to the right person who's maybe seen a decision maker, or they've seen something in on a news presentation or the local newspaper, and suddenly they're like, oh, we might be able to help here, which is always welcome. But my colleague Tori is working with several people now who can maybe cut out all those middlemen, and that will be really an exciting addition to what we're already able to offer. But currently it's places like Morrison's Wholesale for Charity, His Church, which are an amazing organisation. There's any number of kind of avenues to product, but they all come with their own challenges. And being across Norfolk with the road system that we have.
Our great road system, you mean?
Yes.
Our road.
That's probably more like it. What we found is, as we were opening hubs, they were coming online. As the person who set up the first one, I'd be saying, oh, you need to be looking at, and give 4 or 5 examples. The hub would come back to me and say, that's brilliant, but actually they won't deliver to North Norfolk. Yeah. For whatever reason, the trucks come and go.
Don't go out far. Don't go past to Suffolk.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes it is that they deliver on huge, great big trucks and they just can't get down the little roads, or there's nowhere to back in to unload. Yeah. So there's all sorts of challenges.
That seems insane, doesn't it?
I know.
Well, it's all the same hurdles that supermarkets have when they're planning where they're going to place their supermarkets. So it's just on a slightly smaller scale at the moment, isn't it?
Absolutely. So we're with our partnership with Norse and us being able to purchase with a bigger kind of buying voice and buying power, because Norse go in very much smaller vehicles, they can literally access every single area of Norfolk that we're currently covering, which has made a absolutely huge difference. And working with people like FareShare Wholesale, they're based in Ipswich. They have a similar issue with getting things up to places like North Norfolk. So we've kind of set our hubs in little cluster areas who can all work together. And we've got a pilot project starting this week, I think, where FareShare will drop off several people's donation at one hub, and then the other hubs will come and collect it in their cars. Because FareShare also relying on donations, both financial and product, and volunteers, and sometimes they just don't have the drivers or the van capacity to come and do yet more deliveries, even though they would love to be able to do that because they know the need is there.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier about the wraparound care and the more and more so moving toward that. And you may well be aware that basically food banks over the last sort of 3 or 4 years, although it's always been part of the remit of a food bank, it's not like they've taken the eyes off provision of food, but it is like it needs to be sort of linked with care, wraparound care,
Absolutely.
Signposting, all of them things. We have CA workers in all of our sessions now. We've just got a new relationship with Your Own Place. Who are another, you obviously know about them then.
Yes, they're fabulous.
And so we're trying to do that. Other food banks are doing that to a great extent. Other food banks in the network, not so much, but are moving towards it. And so I suppose it's early doors for us, but how do you see your, across the network, how are different people doing that? And maybe not the specifics of it, but how effective do you think it is? Because it's so hard to even measure, I think, sometimes. But so how do you measure that? Because we're in the middle of walking that out. And so how effective do you think you are, not you personally, but the network are at that? Or is it a mixed bag across the centres, do you think?
I think it really is a mixed bag. And you're absolutely right. Measuring outcomes when you've had to sort of do that nice warm handover to a slightly different agency can be quite difficult because of GDPR and organisations maybe not being able to feed back a positive outcome. So it is harder to gather that data. But I think when you don't see that person coming back for a crisis pack,
They're like, tick.
absolutely, you kind of hope that that's because everything else has worked. And you're so right. The provision of food is fabulous for that hungry tummy right now.
Yeah.
But you want to make sure the tummy doesn't get hungry for the longest time possible.
Yeah.
So offering that wraparound care and support, which hopefully will move people away from those challenges and issues that brought them to you or to a food hub is absolutely paramount. And it wasn't something really on the agenda 3 years ago. It was, let's just get people access to affordable network. Food.
Yeah, similar.
But
journey.
Very quickly, actually, we realised that having asked no really in-depth personal questions, people were telling us what the issues were anyway, because we looked not overly official, we looked friendly, hopefully. Most of the time.
We look unofficial, more like unprofessional, isn't it?
That wasn't, sometimes, I mean, and...
that can help.
Yes, absolutely. Looking real and looking human absolutely helps people to come in and actually open up to you about what the challenges are. Yeah. And if they feel comfortable to open up to you guys, someone in a hub, someone at the council, it doesn't matter who, as long as that person has an idea of the local network of support that is available. And I think most of the hubs want to do that wraparound support, as you guys obviously do here as well. And sometimes it is just space that limits them for having people actually come in. Yeah. But I think because all of them are based from within their own community, they do know the people that they're signposting onto. So when they say, you need to go and speak to Beth at CA, she's lovely. She'll guide you through the sorting out your debt problems. Yeah. She'll hold your hand. She'll be lovely. It comes across as genuine because you have met person, you know she is going to give that warm, non-judgmental welcome, and you know the person will be looked after with care. And that comes across. And I think when that happens, whether they're in the actual hub itself or you're signposting on, maybe making the initial phone call with them so that the person doesn't feel they have to tell their whole sad story tale yet again to someone, the bare bones of the story are already passed over. I think that care is engaged with much better, with much better outcomes, because the person is already open to, okay, I've maybe been burying my head in the sand a bit because I haven't known where to start unpicking all the issues I've got, but someone's actually happy to hold their hand through unpicking one thing. Once they've done that, it's like, well, okay, I've done that now. I can maybe look at the next challenge and the next and the next. And then someone is actually starting to thrive rather than survive. Yeah. And that's really, really important, that I think it becomes almost your own little community hub of all kinds of information that's given in a friendly, discreet, non-judgmental way, so that whatever your issue is, if the person that you're opening up to doesn't have the answer, I bet you know where to look to start finding the solution with and for someone. And that is hugely important.
If we take that and extrapolate it out into the future, or even actually maybe today, because we had conversations with a CA manager who basically has said, because of the cost of living crisis and inflation, food inflation particularly, like they've done sometimes everything they can do to get financial inclusion work done to maximise income, you know, whether that's benefit or whatever. And it's like the person is still in a pickle. And so like we can do all of this and we might help 50% of people not have to use our service. Perhaps I'm just picking a number at random. But like, do you think there's a danger because of the cost of living now, especially food prices, that even if we do all that, there will be a cohort of people that are just going to have to use particularly your service because you're maybe a step up from us in terms of emergency or from short to long term? Do you think there'll be people that could have ticked all the boxes and done everything they could do and are still just going to have to use you indefinitely?
For the very foreseeable future, absolutely. And I know there is the conversation around no food banks, but I think for now it's most definitely something that's needed. And if somebody's first point of contact is a food bank, then knowing that there's help to step away from the actual initial crisis, I think is really important. Equally, if someone's accessing a food hub and you are aware that, you know, they might have suddenly lost their job out of nowhere and the crisis point hits, it's equally as important that as a food hub, we know that you guys are currently there helping to support that person who might have just dipped into a crisis that will be sorted in the fairly short term, although it will probably feel like forever for them whilst it's happening. And I think that cross-working and that cross-partnership, not just food hub to food bank, but actually with all the community setups within each town, village or city, is so important, that because actually we're all trying to support somebody to thrive and a family to thrive. So us referring to you or to Citizens Advice doesn't take away from what we do. And I think we have to know and understand that we want to help everybody. That isn't always possible in the way we might like and in the timeframes we might like. But if you thought about what would happen to those people if you weren't trying to help, that for me is much worse. Yeah. So we have to almost take it on the chin, really, that we might not be able to get everybody to the position we would like to see them in as quickly as we can, unfortunately.
Doing everything we can to help as many people as possible within our remit and our ability and our finance and our time.
Absolutely. And sometimes the stories you hear, it's about actually someone having a listening ear sometimes, because they're either feeling isolated and lonely, or they don't feel that they can burden a family member or friend because they also have lots of issues and challenges. So particularly when we've had people coming in who are grieving, you can't always wave the magic wand on that, but you can be that listening ear and give somebody time, which is equally as precious. So it's about the kind of hard outcomes, but also that somebody being seen and being heard. And one of lots of things have stayed with me in my memory. But one lady, an elderly lady who came in with family every week, I wandered past with an armful of stuff for the fridge. And I said to her, "Morning, how you doing?" And she went, "Yeah, good, thanks." And I walked on and then walked back and went, "You're not okay, are you?" And she went, "Nope, nope." And I said, "Okay, I'm not going to be nice to you because I think that's going to be worse." And she went, "Yeah." I went, "Do you want me to be really rude to you?" And she went, "Yep." So I won't say what I said, but I was very rude. I was very rude. And she laughed and she said, "Thank you." And I carried on. But when she came to the till afterwards, she let her family check out first. And she leant across and she said, "Thank you for seeing me, because not one of my friends and family have realised I'm struggling right now. There's nothing anyone can do to help. It's something I have got to work through." She said, but you saw me today and I won't forget that. And that has stayed with me because that is a difference you can make when actually you probably think, well, I'm just doing my job, whether you're volunteer or staff. Oh, I'm just doing what I do. It's just my job. Yeah. It isn't just
your personality and how you interact with other humans.
And it's not just anything. That is, moments like that are just humbling, and absolutely humbling.
You want to be able to replicate that across the county with other people having that experience, leading them hubs and stuff.
Absolutely.
You mentioned earlier before we were recording about a soft launch of a new site, so in Norfolk. But what are your, on that note then, what are your hopes and dreams and plans for expanding the reach and maybe the depth of service or the scope of your projects in the future across Norfolk? What are you, give us the big 10-year plan or something.
Wow, 10 years. How long have you got? So currently the amount of hubs we have, we are expanding by another 4 or 5. We were going to stick at 15 hubs. Then it kind of got to 20. And then we've said 25 and it's going to be slightly more than that. So I think we'll end up with 26 or 27 affordable food hubs, main affordable food hubs. We're looking currently at about how we can set up satellites of those so that where there is perhaps a larger village or a small town that has the outlying villages, could there be a satellite service? Is there a couple of people who can work with that hub to offer something in a pop-up situation? So we're currently working with a couple of villages to see how that might pan out. It
is an efficient way of doing it. Most of the food bank network work like that, with one central bigger site and then others feed off of that, with a core group of volunteers and funding and governance. It's a way of expanding it and scaling it, isn't it? Without having more than 27 centres across the county.
I mean, we get to know our hubs really well and we pop in and visit and they come up for meetings and we meet online and there's a WhatsApp group and it's brilliant to see how each of the hubs is happy to share their wealth of knowledge, their best practice, new ideas they've come up with, or we trialled this, it worked really well. Or we trialled this, it really didn't work very well for whatever reason. So the hubs are very open with each other and share that with each other, which is absolutely brilliant. It's what we hoped would happen. And again, I think it helps that if I share an idea with somebody in Galston, that's not going to mean that my folks in Thetford get a lesser offering. It just means that people in Galston will also be able to benefit from a really great idea or access to a new service or what have you. So that has always been integral to what we do with the Nourishing Norfolk Network. And I think beyond having the satellites is developing that wraparound care and support service. So part of my job is to kind of go and find those partners, really, have them on as guest speakers to a monthly Teams call so that the hubs are aware of different types of support that's available and around, and to see how we can work in partnership with them. So currently we are working with Norfolk Community Law Service to see if we can get some more outreach work done across Norfolk. Currently, the lovely Cara comes to Thetford and she goes out to Galston and Yarmouth, but the service would like to do more within the hubs because they realise that the people who are accessing the food hubs are the exact same people who may well need access to that kind of level of support and type of support from time to time, be it around debt, benefits appeals, immigration, family law, domestic violence, that kind of thing. They want to be able to be a more present and recognisable face amongst the food hubs and across Norfolk. So that's the kind of thing that we're developing so that as many of the hubs as possible, even if they couldn't have an outreach worker actually in the hub because they're working from the broom cupboard or a porter cabin, actually know where to signpost and get that relationship. So again, it's a warm, fuzzy handover rather than a business card. No, I've heard these people are good. Yeah. It genuinely is. No, I know the person. They're fab. They'll talk you through it, and that handover for help is then much easier.
So effectively the vision is both an expansion and development of both food provision and wraparound care at the same time.
Absolutely.
And so I suppose Trussell's vision over the last 5 years is more really pushing the wraparound care, getting ahead and upstream of the problems and the drivers of food bank need, and whether that's at a local level or national level or policy level. and trying to tackle them things rather than just growing the food provision, because that's all that's happened over the previous 20 years is that we've got really good at providing food. And that network got bigger and bigger and more efficient, and most food banks do that very, very well. And so Trussell's vision, at least for food banks, but I think more wider, is food provision or access to affordable food. Their vision would be not to expand food provision in the third sector, but to actually shrink it. And so, which is, for us a few years ago was like a 180 in what we were trying to do. And so, do you think, maybe you're on that journey and the organisation's on that journey and might end up at the same place as Trussell has, or might go in a different route and what they think, but do you at the moment think that community supermarkets have the same end game in mind of, we don't want to be here, and you're just on the journey of expansion now, but want to retract in the future? Or, and because that's a legitimate position to have, or do you see them as an integral part of society that should be there, that should be run by the charity sector as a layer, within society?
Currently, absolutely, they have to be there. They should be there. The same as food banks. They're needed right now. And I think when food banks set up, and until, as you say, fairly recently, and the same with the food hubs, it was about filling that hungry tummy and maybe giving a little bit of advice around scratch cooking and different products and how to use certain ingredients so that they were getting, better diet. And that was kind of the initial thought, was feed the hungry tummy, everyone feels better and people can function a bit better. But it needs to be more than that, for sure. You need to be able to give people the tools and the confidence and the knowledge to be able to move away from challenge and chaos, if at all possible. And like you said earlier, for some people, you can do everything, they can be doing everything right and they're still really struggling. But if you've done all of that, your job is done. And I think the food is what makes it easier for people to walk across the threshold, hold their hand up and say, I need some help right now. And making people feel that it's okay to ask for help is brilliant. And I think that initial, my kids are hungry, will bring people across the threshold. If the warm welcome is there and the right welcome, that person opens up and suddenly you can help them actually start to address all the other issues and challenges that they're facing. So the food helps to start the conversation, I think, but the conversation is becoming huge and very far-reaching.
Long term, I mean, in the longest term, like if we're moving towards an ideal, if we like, even though we may never reach an ideal society-wide, would you rather that there were no community supermarkets because everyone's in a position where they don't need to do that? Or do you think they are vital? And I don't mean just they're vital now, that they should exist, even if everything's done right, to be the threshold for people to come in to sort other issues out when they might not. Had we not been here?
We always get really excited about a new food hub opening, and that it feels really wrong to say we're excited. And it's not that we're excited that one has to open, but we're excited that actually there's someone within a local community that has stepped up to help other people from their own community. That's what we're excited about, is that the help and provision is there. But for us, absolutely, the absolute best news would be that all food hubs and food banks were closing, because actually people were managing and enjoying a really nice life, thriving. Kids were going to school with full tummies, and the heating's on in the winter and whatever the chillings.
Go to a regular supermarket and do their shop.
Absolutely. I think that would be absolute utopia, that everyone was thriving in that way. And that's something that we would do in a heartbeat if that was the case. I'd have to prep my CV and move on and do something else. But beyond that selfishness, if I want to keep my job, absolutely, the utopia would be that everybody is doing well and occasionally knows that there's a bit of help around if you need it. But I think for that longer term, then I think it will become very much less about the food. That might be the introducer for the long term, but I think it will become more and more about that wraparound knowledge and the people coming in, actually, to do a face-to-face drop-in. It will become very much more about that and improving people's overall life goals and opportunities.
So maybe like food banks have morphed to being a food provision service, to that being like a jigsaw piece in the puzzle of the provision and services you offer, and it might even be called that, always called them things, but that's not the main piece of what you're doing and the work you're doing in the future. And so if we were in a position where everyone can afford food at the supermarket, everyone might think, well, that's brilliant. I know that there'd be others who would think, well, why don't we turn the whole system on its head the other way? And because supermarkets make billions of pounds in profit, like Tesco made £2 billion in profit last year, which was their record. And there's an irony there.
Kind of doesn't sit very well, does it, when you hear things like that?
During the time of the people on the lowest incomes are struggling the most, is where people who've got a lot of wealth are doing the best. And that transfer of wealth, which we know that usually happens in these sort of economic times. And so I'm not saying this should be the case, but it's like, it could be argued that shouldn't all supermarkets be social supermarkets?
Yes, absolutely. And that's something that I've often voiced and thought in my head, if actually you've made that kind of profit, couldn't you make less and just make it affordable for everyone every day?
Yeah.
That would be absolutely spot on. An absolute utopia for me is that wherever you're shopping, absolutely, it's affordable. Yeah. And within that, of course, there would still be the different types of supermarket, I'm sure. But I think when you are making that kind of profit in a time of need, I think if it was me, I'd be looking at what I could do differently and to help more people, for sure. And
that would be turning, that's like not just changing culture a little bit, that's turning society on its head completely in our country completely, perhaps, because there may be people who have more of the socialist mindset that maybe government can step in and be involved in food provision and food production, all that sort of stuff. And others would argue that's the most dangerous thing. If you look at other places in the world, that's how it all goes wrong. And so I can see both parts. Where
absolutely.
I suppose I'm more in the middle. I'd like to see more like co-op-y supermarkets arising, where it's like the consumer owns it and the money's pumped back in, but within its own little business or community. And so might be this.
Bills are paid, staff are paid, profits for good causes locally are maybe made, but actually everyone has access to the things they need at the right price. That, absolutely, I'd be 100% behind that.
Yeah, maybe we're a little way off that, but it does.
I'm going to say, when you're starting it, let me know. I'd be really interested to help. And what might seem obvious to us, apparently isn't obvious to other people around that kind of making maybe slightly less profit and knowing that you're doing something for the least well off in society. And I think we need to maybe look at that a little bit more. Because I don't have an issue with people working really hard, running a business, making lots of money, but I think there comes a time when actually you need to be able to give some of that back. And whether it's within your own local community or nationally, there is a time to give back, I think, that doesn't take away from anything that you're trying to do or who you're trying to be. It's just, for me, that would be the right thing to do.
Yeah, and I suppose when you get to that level, it is about bottom line for big companies. And I think the easy thing would be, for like I just done, is to point the finger and say, you shouldn't be doing this. Where what really needs to happen is for people to rise up from the bottom and have competition through a co-op system that can compete against them giants to then make food affordable.
A lot of the more traditional supermarkets are price matching the newer supermarkets without mentioning any brand names.
Oh, you can, it's fine.
We know who you are.
Yeah. So. I'm always like, these are expensive in Lidl but cheap in Aldi, or the other way around.
But it's happening now. So you see it, in the other supermarkets. This is price matched with. So that kind of change is happening. It just needs to be done more and probably from within more of a community base than another out and out business base, maybe. But when you're starting that, let me know. Happy to help.
I'll have a think about it for a day.
Yeah, because you haven't got much else going on, have you? So, when you've got 5 minutes.
You have a think about that for a day and then I'll tell you.
Well, maybe there's someone listening who's got the time and energy and the intelligence to do it.
If we've inspired someone to go and do that, then again, get in touch, happy to help.
Well, we sort of finish off with the last open question to all our guests, which is if there's anything else that you think we should be talking about, and I mean me and Steph with other people, but society generally, about ending the need for food banks or ending the need for social supermarkets, but generally around food insecurity. Is there any biggie that you think that we should be like discussing or attacking or drilling down? You don't have to answer. It's fine. We can cut it out.
No, I mean, that's a huge question. I think it boils down really to just keeping on talking to different service providers, support providers, and seeing what differences can be made locally. It would be my hope that kind of government and statutory bodies across counties and across the UK would actually start to realise that giving little bits of help isn't helping. There's got to be some change, and whether that be how much people are paid per hour as a basic minimum, whatever that is, that actually gives a bit more equity across the board to people that are putting in a 40+ hour week who are still struggling.
Or 2 40-hour weeks with 2 parents working.
Absolutely. and still struggling. And I think it's very easy for some people to say, well, in my day, I didn't go out to work. My husband did. We bought a house. We did this. We did that. But when you look at what a salary could buy house-wise back then, that is in no way, shape or form doable right now.
Well, I think housing is one of the biggest drivers of it.
Yeah, and when private rents are going up and up and up, that's another huge thing that I think needs to be spoken about and controlled in a different way. And I speak from personal experience where rent was going up literally every year by £25 a month. Year on year, it was just another raise. And you think, well, actually, at some point, if I'm here like 5-10 years, what I'll be paying you is probably double what I could spend on a mortgage. Yeah. But at that point, no matter I could prove I'd paid my rent month in, month out, I still couldn't get awarded the mortgage, which, again, seems really wrong. So for me, housing, if you haven't got that place that you can open the front door, step in and shut it behind you and feel safe and secure, somewhere that's warm, not damp, and actually you can call your own little sanctuary, that's really important. That and a full tummy, I think you can start to then attack all the other issues that come at you from time to time, mostly through no fault of your own.
I think the other two biggest outgoings as a percentage of people's income is housing and then food provision now.
Absolutely.
And so like if we can tackle them two biggies, then that's... we need to build more houses. I've been saying this for ages. Come on, Rishi, sort it out. More houses.
Absolutely. More social housing.
Get your trowel out. Let's go.
We'll send it to him. We'll send this one to him. But yeah, absolutely. More social housing, I think, and more communities within those areas of social housing. And I think that the pandemic actually showed people that within communities there is a lot of goodwill. And I've lived in Thetford now for 10 years, moved up, 9 years. Moved up when my daughter was 1. I'd always lived around Norfolk, Suffolk, then went to Hampshire and places for a few years. But I came back when she was 1, and I was recently asked, why did you pick Thetford to stay in once you'd been here for a year and seen how it is? And my answer was, I've never met community spirit like I see in Thetford anywhere else. And I think the people that set up the food hubs would probably say the same about their village or town or places in Norwich where they've set up. But for me, I've never felt community spirit and community like it anywhere. And that's what makes Thetford, for me, really special, is that there is a huge amount of people willing to step up and lend that helping hand to somebody who's in need in a crisis moment, which is phenomenal. And thank goodness there are those people around, because there's a lot of people in need right now who just need that bit of TLC.
Yeah. What a great place to finish then. Thank you so much, Billie, for coming with us.
You are
today.
so welcome. It's been brilliant chatting to you both.
And just sharing everything. And I know Phil and I, we are cheering you on and are all for everything that you are doing. And so we are so glad that these hubs are popping up everywhere. It's definitely needed. And so thank you for everything you do. Well, thank you also for joining us. Please get subscribing. Make sure you press, what's that there?
Notification bell thing?
Push that button.
It must be down there somewhere.
Somewhere there. So make sure you click on that so you know when our next show is coming up. Because actually, we don't even know who's on our podcast.
Well, we've got lots
next.
of guests. We just don't know who's going on next.
So it's a surprise, not just for us, but for you too. So we'll see you soon.